Black Friday. While it wasn't called Black Friday until the 1960s, and then not popularly called such until the last 2 decades, retailers have been trying to push people to shop the Friday after Thanksgiving since the late 19th, early 20th century. Around this time, it was very popular for various department stores, such as Macy's and Eaton's, to sponsor parades that would occur the day after Thanksgiving. These parades would typically be a major part of Christmas advertising campaigns by these stores. This, in turn, would ultimately result in a lot of people going shopping after the parades were over. Over time, this melded into a commonly accepted, unwritten rule among most major department stores to hold off on their major Christmas advertising pushes until after Thanksgiving, specifically to hold off until these parades were over. By the 1930s, the Friday after Thanksgiving had become the official start of the Christmas shopping season among the vast majority of retailers out there. However, this tradition ultimately resulted in retailers being unhappy with the length of the Christmas shopping season on November's, where the last Thursday was the 5th Thursday in November. Thanksgiving at that time was always on the last Thursday of November. Thus, with the strong encouragement of lobbyists for various retailers, President Roosevelt in 1939 decided to change the official date of Thanksgiving to be on the second to last Thursday in November in order to lengthen the Christmas shopping season as much as possible, with the hope that it would boost sales for retailers and thus boost the economy. However, when Roosevelt changed the official date of Thanksgiving to a week earlier in 1939, many people refused to change the date they held Thanksgiving that year and mockingly called the official government-set Thanksgiving holiday Franksgiving. In fact, a full 22 states refused to go along with Roosevelt's date, which continued for the next 2 years. Texas, on the other hand, decided to take both holidays and held 2 Thanksgivings. In 1941, in order to fix the multiple dates for Thanksgiving issue, Congress passed a law and later amended it that for the first time officially set the date for Thanksgiving into U.S. law. The date they finally set, which Roosevelt ratified, was the 4th Thursday in November, which would sometimes be the last and sometimes be the second to last. In any event, the term Black Friday wasn't coined to describe the day after Thanksgiving until the mid-1960s. Even then, it wasn't a popular term nationally until around the last 20 years. There are several suggested origins for this name. The most likely origin, which is reasonably well documented, is from Philadelphia police officers, bus drivers, and taxi cab drivers who dreaded the day after Thanksgiving due to the traffic problems and the massive amount of people out and about. One of the earliest documented references of this was in December of 1961, when Denny Griswold of Public Relations News stated, "In Philadelphia, it became customary for officers to refer to post-Thanksgiving days as Black Friday and Black Saturday. Hardly a stimulus for good business, the problem was discussed by merchants with their deputy city representative. He recommended adoption of a positive approach which would convert Black Friday and Black Saturday to Big Friday and Big Saturday." Big Friday never caught on, but over the next decade, more and more references can be found in various newspaper archives of this particular Friday being called Black Friday for this reason. In the 1980s, retailers, unhappy with the negative connotations of what appears to be the real origin of the term, decided to start pushing that the actual origin was that most retailers operated in a financial loss for most of the year, and Black Friday was named such because it was the day of the year when retailers would finally see a profit, moving out of the red and into the black. This, of course, simply isn't true. While there are some retailers that depend on the Christmas season's profits to make a profit for the year, most retailers see profits every quarter based on the quarterly SEC filings of those major retailers. There are also no references to this potential origin predating around the 1980s, and there are numerous references to the previously listed theory before that time. A lesser theory that is sometimes spread about is that this naming came from the stock market crash in late 1929, which kicked off the Great Depression. In fact, though, that event happened on a Tuesday, not a Friday. The actual Black Friday stock market scare happened in 1869, was in September, and had to do with gold prices, so in neither case had anything to do with shopping or the Friday after Thanksgiving. While we're on the topic of Black Friday myths, it should be noted that Black Friday is not the biggest shopping day of the year. In fact, it's typically not even in the top 5, though has cracked the ranks a few times. The real biggest shopping day of the year is nearly always the Saturday before Christmas, except when Christmas falls on a weekend day, in which case the biggest shopping day of the year is usually the Thursday or Friday before Christmas. Thus, the procrastinators seem to outnumber the early birds. Bonus facts. In 2008, Yedimitai Demur, a Long Island Walmart temporary employee, was trampled to death on Black Friday when shoppers at Green Acres Shopping Center, impatient with waiting for the store to open, pushed against the doors to try to get them to open. Workers pushed back to try to keep the doors from breaking, but ultimately the masses won out and over 2,000 people streamed in, trampling Demur. The paramedics who arrived and tried to save Demur were also trampled and seriously injured by shoppers who apparently didn't care that there was a dying man lying at the entrance of the store, with paramedics trying to resuscitate him. All told, 5 shoppers had to be hospitalized at that one location, and many more were injured. Bonus fact 2. As mentioned, the term Black Friday itself was first used to describe a stock market crisis on September 14, 1869. At the time, gold prices were almost solely controlled by investors in the New York Stock Exchange. Specifically, James Fisk and Jay Gould headed an investment group that sought to control the price of gold, at that time owning the rights to nearly 50% of all gold circulated in the United States. The only flaw in their plan was that the US government occasionally releases gold reserves for sale in order to regulate the price of gold and keep paper money valuable. To get around this, the investment group recruited President Grant's brother-in-law to convince Grant to appoint Daniel Butterfield as the assistant to the treasurer. Butterfield had agreed that he would do his best to make sure that the government would not release any of their gold holdings and would tip this investment group off when the government was planning on selling gold, so that the investors could first drive up the price of gold and then sell large portions of their gold holding for profit before the government's release drove down prices. The problem started when this group was too successful, driving gold prices up by nearly 15% in a single day at one point. This had a consequence of rapidly decreasing the value of paper money. When Grant finally realized what was happening, he ordered the federal government to sell $5 million in gold to counteract this group's efforts. Within minutes after the gold hit the market, the price of gold plummeted, resulting in an investor panic, which ultimately caused a huge stock market drop, ruining many. Interestingly, because Fisk and Gould were tipped off the day before this government release, they were able to sell off much of their gold holdings to various groups. Fisk and Gould made a tidy profit, while the groups they sold to were ultimately ruined the next day when the government gold hit the market. So I really hope you liked that video, and if you did like it, click like below and leave us a comment to let us know what you think. And also check out a couple of our other videos, which are linked to on the screen now, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos every day. Thanks for watching.